What's going on, everybody? This is Chandler Droke. Join with me. I have the very special Chandler Ball, Chandler Squared here. And this is the Apostolic Witness podcast. We're so happy you joined us today. Recently, Chandler Ball wrote an article that really caught my attention. And the article was titled, "Why Aren't Young People Driving?" And I thought that was just a great topic that you picked. It just captivated me, but it's very true. It's very true. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But for those of you that don't know, Chandler Ball is from Carmel, Indiana. He has served as the youth pastor over the last...
About 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. And doing a great job up in Carmel. He also serves as the district youth secretary.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yep.
Just fantastic job. He was, whenever I was up in Indiana, you were actually in Germany preaching, right?
Yeah. I had to sub in real quick, so I actually missed our winter youth conference, which was a bummer.
He is a fantastic guitar player. He's a fantastic bass player. He is the man. If you need something done, you call the Chan Man. So, but let's talk a little bit about why young people aren't driving. Okay, you wrote this, and I want you to tell us a little bit about what went through your mind whenever this was coming out. All right?
Yeah, sure thing. So I noticed, like you mentioned, I've been a youth pastor now for almost 2 years, and kind of what brought this whole thing up was I noticed that whenever we would have youth group events, we played dodgeball a lot, play volleyball, just fun stuff, hangouts. I noticed that so many of our young people were actually having their parents drive them to all these activities. And I just started to realize out of our youth group of 20, 30, how many aren't driving. And not just the younger ones. I mean, a lot of people who are 16, 17, 18 don't have their license.
Yeah.
And it just kind of sparked a question, because I actually remember when I was in the youth group, it was even a problem then, and now it's just gotten worse and worse. So I started doing some research, found a pretty cool article that just kind of went over some statistics. I'll read off a couple things, but
Sure.
It says that in 1983, 46% of 16-year-olds had their license, and now it's gone to 25%. Wow. So quite a big drop. And then 18-year-olds, it was 80% in 1983. Now it's at 60%.
Wow.
Which doesn't seem like a huge drop until you think that that's almost 4 out of every 10 18-year-olds don't have their license. And I got my license late at 17, and that was kind of weird. I was the last in my friend
You got
group.
your license at 17.
Yeah, I was. What was funny is I was actually the last in my friend group to get my license, and I was kind of
And you
embarrassed.
wrote an article on this.
I did. I did.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I noticed that, found this article, really struck me. And what's really interesting, actually, it's not even in the article that I wrote, but that's a statistic from, I think, 2020. And
Wow.
I guarantee it's probably even worse now. And so that's kind of what sparked my research. And I kind of came up with a couple ideas I have. I mean, this topic you could take so deep that you could probably write a whole book off of kind of this phenomenon that's happening. But I broke down, in my personal opinion, completely just opinion, 3 things that I think contribute to this problem. The first thing I would say is young people can experience more freedom from their bedroom than we could with a car.
Wow.
You can jump online now and hang out with your friends, play video games with your friends, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, fill in the blank. There's just so many ways that you can get connected with people.
Yeah.
And we really didn't have that. I'm not that old, but, I didn't have that. When I was 14, 15, 16, if I want to hang out with my friends, I'd go ride my bike to their house and play basketball.
Yeah.
But now if you're 12, we have 12 and 13-year-olds who are playing online video games with their friends all the time. And, we never had that. So there's not really as big of a need to get your driver's license. Because when, back in the 80s when this article was talking about and referencing, if you want to hang out with your friends, like you had to have your license just to get around. And now it just kind of speaks to how connected the young people are, which I use that word loosely because how connected are you really with people that you don't even get to see?
That's good.
So that would be my first thing that I think contributes, my first factor that contributes to that. The second one I would say is kind of this trap that I think some parents and adults fall into, which I feel so weird saying parents and adults because I'm not a parent. So it's always awkward for me to talk about this. I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, like I don't have kids, so I have no idea. But I would assume that, sometimes I feel like parents and adults, and I fall into this trap as well, kind of fall into this way of thinking of like, well, it would just be easier if I did this for them.
Yeah.
So instead of you teaching your son or daughter how to drive and really pushing them and motivating them to go get this done, like, well, it's only 10 minutes down the road. I'll just drive them. And I've actually fallen into that trap myself as a youth pastor at times. I'll think, well, it would just be easier for me to take care of this youth service. It'd be easier for me to play the guitar.
That's good.
It'd be easier I don't want to have to worry about something going wrong. Let me just take care of it.
That's good.
But the problem is we're not motivating young people to get involved when we just take care of everything on our own. So I think kind of went all over the place there, but I think that's another factor. And then my last one, which I don't want to get too much in depth on, because I'm not a counselor or anything like that, but anxiety levels are just at an all-time high.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, like every year you just see more statistics coming out about mental health.
It's insane.
So I'd say that those are the three factors that I came up with. There's probably 10, 20 different reasons why young people aren't driving, but that's just where my mind went to.
Sure. Well, whenever you begin to talk about it, the way that I began to think of it was just how you portrayed it, which was, first of all, we are in a generation now of young people that almost shield off responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to just shed any negative light, but that's the truth, And I mean, I was 16 whenever I got my license. I didn't get it like the day of, but a lot of people my age, we got our license at 16 years old. We got our permit at 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And it even translates over into the spiritual realm, like what you're talking about, in the fact that, like what Brother Hammond preached about at NYC, about placing the yoke upon young people and a burden upon them. And so I think it's very true what you're talking about, in the fact that we see young people shielding away from just this doesn't even have to be spiritual, but this is just general responsibilities. I think as the generations progress, we'll see even more of that because of the convenience of a social media, of the convenience of just being able to stay home and stay on television, play any game that you want with your friend. You're absolutely right. But whenever I thought of that, it struck me, because I know young people right now that's the case. That's the case where some of them would rather stay and some of them want to stay home and not go and participate in things. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but they would rather not go participate in youth group events. And many people listening probably know people like that. There's probably some in your youth group where they would rather just stay in their box and just do what they're comfortable with. How do we get young people to that place where they feel comfortable in going out beyond their norm?
Yeah, I think a couple of things came to my mind when you were talking. The first thing is we have to make sure that we're placing a high value on serving in the youth group and serving in our church. Okay. So, for example, maybe a young person does step out and do something out of the ordinary. Maybe a young person steps out of their comfort zone and exhorts in class, or, gives a little sermonette that's a couple minutes. Sure. Make that, place value on that. So the rest of the youth group sees, okay, this is something that we value here at Faith Students. We're going to talk about it. We're going to encourage them. We're going to say, like, oh, we're so proud of so-and-so for doing this. We have to place a high value on it. And that kind of goes to my second point, which is you have to give young people room to fail at times.
That's good.
Which sounds harsh, but if you are so afraid of a young person failing that you don't actually use young people to do things in service, it's actually more of a hindrance than it is a help to them. You have to give them that opportunity. Yes, you know, you get a young person playing guitar for the very first time in youth class, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
It could be a disaster. But you know what? You have to give a young person an opportunity. And even if maybe it's not as good as somebody who's older, who's been playing for a lot longer, but give that young person an opportunity and place value upon that.
That's good.
Make that a valuable thing in your youth group to serve. You know, make that something that other young people are going to look at and say, man, I want to do that. Like that looked awesome. Like I want to be involved like they are.
Right.
And then I think the last thing I would probably say is find ways to get young people involved. And I guess what I mean is not every young person is going to have the same skills or interests.
That's right.
You know, not every young guy is going to want to play the acoustic guitar. I wish they would. We need more musicians. Yeah. But not every young person is going to want to play the piano or play guitar. But maybe somebody feels a special call to prayer. Well, I'm going to have them start the service off with prayer. I'm going to find some way to get them involved. Maybe some young person is, you know, really great with computers, great with media, something like that. I'm not good with computers at all.
Me either.
I'm horrendous. But, you know, maybe that's someone else's gift. In other words, don't force what you wish they would do on them.
That's good.
Find what they enjoy doing. Find what they have a passion for and find ways to use that.
That's good. That's good. There are young people that we know are very hesitant about jumping in and wanting to participate in being involved in a service, maybe being involved just even outside of a service, just greeting, whatever it may be. And you're absolutely right. You have to value those things. These are just two youth pastors just talking about ideas on how to get young people involved. It's very true. Maybe you're a pastor or youth pastor listening today, and you have some students where you want them to start driving.
Yeah.
You want them to start driving. You want them to start getting involved. Well, we didn't come here today to just be Debbie Downers. We came to try to help with solutions. Try to get them plugged in. Get them plugged in where they can. Like you said, not everybody's going to be a musician.
Yeah, and that's great because we need more than just musicians.
That's right.
We need people, you know, helping out with media. We need people who are good on social media who can make posts, you know. And furthermore, most of the time, if a young person is passionate about something, it's not just because they like it, but I feel like most of the time it's also a God thing.
That's so
if
true.
If a young person is passionate about something, 9 times out of 10, it's because God has placed that passion within them.
That's true.
So why not use what God has placed within them? Don't try and push something on them that maybe that's not their gifting. You know, sometimes, you know, this has been mentioned at NYC a couple times, but sometimes there is just a need and you have to find somebody to throw up there. I mean, that happens. But don't become too over dependent on that. You know, try and find what are the young people passionate about, and let's get them involved in that. You know,
that's right. Have them lead a game.
Yeah.
Have them lead if a midweek, you know, activity or something along those lines. Have them try to go and get a friend group together to go and hang out. Just, I think, encouraging that involvement. The craziest thing happened the other day. We have a youth group of those that are just below the age where they can start driving. And it's the craziest thing that you're talking about this, because for the first time in a long time, they set up their own event that they hosted and they did. And they told me about it. They told me about it. They said, hey, we're going to Topgolf on Thursday, and we just want to let you know. We want to invite you because you're cool. You can still come. And I'm like,
I don't know if I'd get that invite right now. I don't know. They're like, man, he's pretty old. We don't want him to.
Whatever. and I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is really awesome. And it was a sign of a healthy youth group to see that there are young people even below the age of being able to drive, that they can go out and set up events with their friends on their own. And that took time. That took time. That didn't just happen overnight. You have to be, as youth pastors or leaders, pastors, you have to sometimes be that glue to encourage them to interact with each other.
And I'm also guessing that just from that story, it's the first time I've heard that story. We didn't rehearse this or anything like that. But after hearing that story, I'm guessing that you, as the youth pastor, probably value getting people together.
Oh, my goodness.
And they saw that in you. And they saw that you value getting together with people and hanging out and, having an activity. And whether we realize it or not, not to be like prideful in any kind of way, but your youth group will look up to you and will a lot of times take on your characteristics.
That's right.
So if you're passionate about inviting people to church, it might take a while, but eventually your young people are also going to be passionate about inviting people to church. Whatever you're placing value on in as a leader, they're also going to put value in.
That's so good.
So
that's so good. And like I said, that was one of the first moments and one of the first times a young youth group was able to cross that hurdle of, I don't have to have Chandler to go and set it up. I don't have to have Hannah go and set it up. Hannah's not with us tonight, but she would vouch for what we're saying. I didn't have to go and ask them to go and put it all together, but they set it up, they invited us, and that was a form of them driving.
it was, yeah.
And that meant so much to me as a youth leader, and it's the small things like that we have to celebrate.
Yes.
It's the small things that we have to celebrate, and I think God honors it. And as you were talking, there was one more story from me. There was a young man in our church. They're newer. They've been to our church about 2 years, and their family came. Well, he was one of those guys that just wasn't just overly involved. He was hesitant about some things, but the older he got, the more he got interested in sound. Now, this isn't a musician. This isn't someone on the stage. This isn't someone even being a greeter. But this is someone that had a passion about sound. 14 years old. He comes up to me. He says, "Hey, I think I want to run sound next week." And I'm like, "What?" I was like, "Well, I don't know about that. Well, maybe we can have you sit with
shadows
with the sound guy." Mm-hmm. And just those moments like that, it changed him, because he can use that for the furtherance of the kingdom. He's wanting to be an audio engineer now, and do it for the glory of God. Those things right there make us just so ecstatic and so over the moon. He's 15 now, and you can see how God just progresses that, but it's because a young man was willing to get in the driver's seat and say, "You know what? I can do this. I can do this. I don't have to rely on youth pastor to do that. I don't have to rely on, mom and dad to do that." And the last thing I'll leave us with, how do you see this take place even whenever it comes to a worship service in the altar, in their devotion? What do you see young people across the landscape? Do you think that they are more? Do you think that young people are getting to a point to where they are less responsive?
You mean in the altar and prayer?
Yes.
And I don't know. That's a tough question, because I feel like every youth group, every young person is going to be so different.
Okay.
So I would say this kind of could open up a can of worms, because I know this would be a little bit off topic, but I think that a lot of issues that I've had personally, maybe you've had them as well, is more about attention span than anything.
That's good.
We're so, everybody is so used to Instagram reels that are 10 or 15 seconds, YouTube shorts that are, I don't even know how short they are, but they're used to scrolling through that. And I'll give you a quick story. So when I first took over as youth pastor, I kind of had my mind set on how youth class was going to look. You know, I'd been to Bible college. I'd been in youth ministry for a really long time. I was super excited for this opportunity. I mean, it's everything I had dreamed about. I want to be a youth pastor as long as I can remember. I love youth ministry, young people. Sure. It was my passion. I was excited. And I had this idea in my mind, like, well, I came up with this schedule. You know, once a month we're going to have an activity. We're going to play volleyball. We're going to do something fun, take them out to get ice cream. We have class on Wednesday. So one Wednesday we'll have an activity. 2 Wednesdays of the month we'll have more of a Bible study format, and 1 Wednesday we'll have like a youth service. And I came up with this plan. I'm going to put it on a schedule. I'm going to do all this. It's going to work out great. And what I realized is what I had planned just was not working. The attendance was doing fine. I think the attendance actually went up quite a bit. I mean, the kids liked that schedule. They liked knowing what was coming. But what I realized is if I teach for 30 to 35 minutes, after 10 or 15 minutes, I lose 90% of the class. You know, I can keep their attention for about 12 or 13 minutes right now. And I was presented with this, and I realized, like, I can do one of two things. I can either do what I want to do, which is teach 35 minutes somewhere in there, and lose most of these young people, or I can change my method to what our youth group needs right now. Sure. Maybe someday we'll get to that point where we can have a youth class or a Bible study where we're talking about a topic for 30 or 35 minutes. But for right now, I just can't do that. And that's okay. But what I had to realize is, like, I'm going to have to change my opinions or my what I thought would work into what is actually going to work. And so now, I mean, I have about a 15-minute lesson because that's about where we can maintain their focus right now. And it was a little discouraging at first, but now I'm like, well, what is going to work? What I realized is, like, with our group, I need a lot of discussion.
That's good.
I'm going to teach for 15 minutes, but I'm going to be asking them questions after almost every statement. I'm be like, hey, you know, so-and-so, like, what do you think about this? What's your opinion? Like, hey, have you ever noticed this in school? You know, give me a story. Like, has this ever happened to you? Good. Get them involved, because I might have to change what I want to do to what's actually going to work best. Right. And, you know, like I said, maybe someday we could get to teaching for 20 or 30 minutes, but I'm going to adapt. Well, I'm going to do what I can. It
gets those kids that aren't usually talkative.
Yes.
That aren't usually the ones speaking up and responding to a 35, 40-minute message. Yeah. It gets them involved and engaged to where now I have something to talk about. Now now my youth pastor's calling on me, and he's asked me what I did at school. Now I can respond, and now I can get involved. That's unique. I like that.
Yeah, it was just so funny because I just had this perfect plan in my mind that I thought was going to work great, and then after 3 or 4 months, I was like, it's just not working, and that's okay. I'm not going to be discouraged. I'm going to change my method to better suit the young people that I have right now. And, you know, we could set goals, we can do things in the future. That's right. But right now, this is what's gonna work best, and I can't be upset about it. I'm just gonna have to change what I thought and into what they need. So
that's good. That's good. I think sometimes we can even be counted as driving instructors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point.
We can be counted as driving instructors. We want to get young people at the place where they are able to start making godly decisions, godly choices.
And every time that they step out and take responsibility, it's going to get easier the next time.
That's right.
The very first time a young person steps out and does something, maybe you've got a young person that doesn't pray with anybody, that's very reserved, that stays at their seat. The first time they get out of their seat to go to the front with the rest of the youth group, with the rest of their friends, the next week it's going to be even easier.
That's right.
And then after that, like, me praying with my friends, it's not that weird. You know, it's not like I thought it was. And then the next week, like, well, you know, praying out loud. And then before you know it, they've, you know, integrated into the youth group in a way that you didn't think, because all it takes a lot of times is that first step. Like, if you can get them to take that first step, they realize, like, this isn't as difficult as I thought. Like, this is great.
That's right.
So that's just that first step. Get them to take that first step out. Sure. But
and what I will say about the question, I talked about being reserved. It depends on where you go.
Yeah.
It depends on what youth group you're with. the youth group that I'm a part of, we have a very active youth group. They worship. They are in the altars. They pray. They seek the face of God. Not every one of them comes and is a part of that. But for the most part, a lot of them are active in worship. They want to be involved in that service. But I think a lot of times young people can fall into the place to where it's so cliche, but they depend on other people's worship. They depend on other people's, other people's singing, other people's devotion to the Lord to get them to the place where they need to be. That's what we're talking about here today. And so
they're just letting somebody else drive the car for them.
Exactly. And so I see that in a couple of them. But if a young person makes up their mind and says, you know what, it's my turn, it's my time, that's a big move. It's a big move, and I think that God honors that.
Oh yeah.
I think, and let me tell you something. You're never too young to start. Now, driving physically,
yes,
maybe,
please don't.
Yeah.
If you're 12, don't drive yet.
Public service announcement. But I think that you're never too young to start taking those decisions for yourself on your own as a young individual, and God will honor that.
One more quick thing to add. I love a young person's passion, but as a youth pastor, a lot of times you have to combine passion with direction, because passion with no direction can be incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
Maybe you have a young person that's really, really passionate about praying with people on the altar. That's fantastic. That's incredible. But they're going to need guidance. They're going to need direction. We've had a couple instances, which obviously not going to name any names or anything, where we've had young people who are so passionate about praying for people that they walk up to like elders in the church and lay their hands on their head and start praying for them. And, I love to see the passion. But part of your role as a youth pastor is like, let's take that passion and let's just give them a little bit of guidance with that.
That's right.
Like, hey, just letting you know, we actually had a lesson in our youth class probably a couple months ago where I talked about, it was basically why are there certain kind of expectations and rules on an altar? Not just what are they, but why are those there? Why do young people not normally lay their hands upon elders' heads?
That's good.
It's because it's about authority. It's about respect. I'm not just going to tell them, hey, don't do this. I am going to say that. But I'm not just going to say, hey, don't do this. I'm going to say, this is why we don't do this. And so you take that passion and then you put guidelines and directions and you kind of lead them,
You're being a driving instructor.
Yeah, you're just sitting there and saying, hey, like, you should probably start braking a little soon. Man, that red light's getting close.
Yeah, you have that other steering wheel on the other side of the car.
You got your brake pedal over here just in case they start going too fast.
That's so funny. Well, man, this has been a treat. I truly appreciate you coming on the Apostolic Witness podcast. You've been a part of the assemblies since how long?
Probably just about my whole life, I'd say. I can't remember when I wasn't. So
Wow. Well, we love your family. We love what FAC Carmel is doing, and you guys are first class, and we love you, and we appreciate you, and we're excited to see some young people start driving here soon. Maybe we can get some people behind the wheel.
Amen.
And just the last thing, I always wanted to be that guy on the go-karts to get the fastest one. I always wanted to be that guy. Whenever you went and ride go-karts, maybe at the beach or wherever you went on vacation, I always wanted to find that fastest one because I wanted to do that. I think it's zeal that young people need to strive for and have. And that's what all we're encouraging young people to do, is have a zeal and a passion for the Lord. And these things will come. These things will happen. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.